Everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar on transformation to lean portfolio management. I have a lot of content to cover, so if we don't get to some of the parts at the end of the presentation, please feel free to reach out and we can have a one-on-one on any of the concepts that we talked about here. So just a quick table of content in terms of our talking points. Going to give you a quick intro of Wicresoft. Going to talk about Scaled Agile Framework Lean Portfolio Management, or LPM, and its timeline. Key concepts on process on LPM. An introduction to our OnePlan solution for lean portfolio management, and then some key takeaways. What I manage what I call Enterprise Agile and cloud practice. It's a very interesting time to be involved in IT and in the delivery of value within organizations. These three specific disciplines, on their own, can have dedicated teams within organizations. When you combine them, the accelerated value, the amount of value within organizations is proving to be fairly significant. There's probably pockets of these practices within your organizations. I would highly recommend that there's more emphasis on them, because from business transformation, digital transformation is really what's driving a lot of the growth and value delivery for major organizations. So you can see there that in Agile we're involved in Enterprise Agile transformations, and we do have a solution, OnePlan for lean portfolio management, which I'll talk about later. In terms of DevOps, it's tied to Agile and it's tied to cloud, and we can support that, and they're very important practices. And finally, cloud. Azure is our focus, but we can also do other cloud platforms, and again, the combination of all three is really where the focus is for the entire business transformation. So in terms of safe and lean portfolio management, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the timeline and how this has come about. And actually the portfolio level of SAFe has been around since 2012, when SAFe 1.0 came about from Scaled Agile Inc. The framework, because it's not a methodology, the framework has evolved over time, and we are now at SAFe 4.6 in 2019. It came out before 2019, but this is the current version. And we can see that at the top layer we have lean portfolio management. So even though the concept of portfolio within Scaled Agile has been around, it's really now where we formally, based on the practice and based on the evolution of the Scaled Agile framework, where we now have lean portfolio management. In terms of the first teach actually occurred June 4th to 6th, and I was privileged enough to be part of that class. Very interesting set of practitioners that was part of that. We had a visit from Dean Leffingwell and Richard Naster, who was the instructor, and a lot of great exchange of ideas and learning in terms of what a lean portfolio management really means. And then yesterday, the actual lean portfolio management as a course was generally available. So the content that you've seen in the Scaled Agile Framework site is now part of a course and a certification within SAFe. So we can now go and participate in the formal implementation of lean portfolio management as certified practitioners. Now, let's get into kind of the key concepts and process, just so we understand where we're going. So I've used this slide a couple of times, and is really trying to position the organization in terms of where you are in terms of the Enterprise Agile spectrum. There's obviously traditional PPM. We've been in that mode for 50 years, and really it's the waterfall methodology where you're going to go through and define portfolios. It could be at different levels of the organizations, even with strategic initiative, but you have kind of a process for moving portfolio initiatives through that waterfall portfolio. In the middle, we have adaptive, what we call adaptive PPM. It's really where you're combining modes, waterfall and agile, even hybrid in some cases. And the organization, due to the nature of its work, might be in a position where it has to actually be an adaptive PPM. And we're very much pragmatists, even though we're say practitioners. So this might be a state where your organization is in. LPM is at the very left, and it's Lean Portfolio Management. It has a very specific set of principles, tools. It's a framework that's fairly well defined, and you're supposed to behave and act in the way that say Lean Portfolio Management kind of professes. So I put some examples below of where you might be in as an industry, but in IT and information technology. But what we're seeing more and more is that organizations are shifting to the left and going more towards adaptive PPM and having an adaptive PMO, or going all the way and doing agile Lean Portfolio Management. The executive attention to what agile can bring to the table in terms of accelerated value delivery is what's creating a lot of this. So you might be in a position where you have to actually go and be more adaptive. Now, the Scale Agile Link point of view, interestingly enough, is that bimodal, this middle state is transition. It's a transition state until you get to an agile PPM. The reality is you might be in bimodal as a permanent state just because of the nature of your business. So that doesn't mean that you cannot implement Lean Portfolio Management. A lot of the principles that are there are extremely valuable. So just it really depends, and that's a context. The term context is used a lot because you're supposed to take in and make it your own, depending on your organizational situation, context, culture, and so on. So from here, I want to talk about how SAFe in general and Lean Portfolio Management is going to require significant organizational change. So this is the actual SAFe roadmap, and by the way, all this information is within the Scale Agile Framework site, so you can actually consume it all right there. Originally, the concept of portfolio management, Lean Portfolio Management, was at the very end of the process. In other words, you were supposed to go SAFe, which meant that you have to bring in, train your Lean Agile change agents, develop a center of excellence, some part of your organizational structure that's going to be dedicated to actually helping the rest of the organization go through the transformation. Training is for everyone. So there's training for executives, managers, leaders, and the core after you go through these first steps is identify what I call value streams and agile release streams, and I'll talk about that in a minute. As you see, the portfolio phase is at the very end of the journey. So you have to go through all of these different steps in launching ARTs and actually continuing to train teams and doing program planning, which is a core component of SAFe, and then you get to portfolio. Well, with Lean Portfolio Management and business agility, now the question is, can we actually do this top down right now for any organization? And while I would say that the answer is yes, you will not be able to accomplish that without actually going through and defining your organization in terms of what are those value streams and agile release streams. And don't want to get too much into what value streams are, but the concept that has other foundational elements, but if you don't actually go through that, you will not be able to actually do lean portfolio management. I'll talk about in a second why that is, because the concept of value stream is inherently tied to what the lean portfolio is. So if you're going to go top down and you haven't gone through an agile transformation, a safe transformation, just be very careful, because again, it's all based on defining portfolios based on value streams. So another important concept in SAFe in general, but in lean portfolio management, is collaborations. So we have three major components within lean portfolio management that are called collaborations: your strategy and investment funding. And this is top down. Here you're going to be hitting on organizational strategy in whichever form it is formulated in your organization, and you're going to have to come up with strategic themes, which I'll talk about in a second. There is a process. The framework has a process where you have agile portfolio operations in terms of going through and putting work through the lean portfolio management, and then finally lean governance in terms of having all the decision makers involved, the key roles. They are listed there, so you see that some of the key roles in each one of those collaborations are shown. I would say that for lean portfolio management, the whole concept is based on collaboration and decentralizing decision making, which is one of the key principles. On the right here, I have readiness. So there is a readiness assessment that you can take. There's 5 areas which define an enterprise agility. Lean portfolio management is one of them, and you can see that the collaborations actually have ratings, and you have your typical kind of assessment in terms of how well you are doing in every one of those collaborations in using the tools and following the process. So I want to take a second, because I think it's also really important to highlight that the Lean-Agile mindset and safe Lean-Agile principles are critical to understanding this. And I'll take an I'll talk about an anecdote. In the class, went to the instructors and said, well, what if you have executives that really don't believe in this? And plainly, they said, you're going to have a very, very difficult time in implementing lean portfolio management if your executives don't want to, in some way, change their mindset, which is really attitude towards these principles. It's just going to be very, very difficult, because you're always going to be pulling towards command and control way of working, and traditional ways of working. This is actually a very different way of looking at how you go through and operate with an organization. So want to just highlight that so that everyone is aware. Within the lean portfolio management, the primary reasons for going in this direction is because you want to actually increase flow, and the traditional PPM challenges inhibit the flow of value. I mean, this is directly from the recently released content for lean portfolio management. And you can see that for lean portfolio management at the very right, we're talking about organization around value. So it's almost like breaking your organizational structure and defining it around the teams that work on those value streams. Another key question is, should you do a reorganization based on that redefinition of value streams? The answer is no, not necessarily. You might eventually have to, but really what you're creating is a virtual organization around those value streams, and all of that value rolls up in the organization. There's a fair amount of guidance on lean budgets and guardrails and how you should invest over horizons. Again, don't have time to get too much into those specific details, but it's very important concepts in terms of lean budgets. Rolling weight planning, this has been around for some time, but here it's very applicable. Incremental value delivery, here we're talking about chunking work into that minimum viable product in delivering epics, features, stories into the solutions and value streams. LPM allows you to match demand to capacity versus, the traditional perpetual demand that we're always overlaying of demand that we have. And finally, lean business cases. So, there's a very narrow approach to doing a business case and evolving it over the portfolio campaign. So what we're trying to do is, apply these 6 principles so that we can increase the delivery of value. So let's get to the nuts and bolts of what this is all about. So what is a portfolio? So if you go to the Scale Agile Framework website, you'll see that we have a layer called Lean Portfolio Management, and there's a whole series of tools, guidance, process steps that are here. Over the next couple of slides, what I'm going to try to do is kind of bring it down to its nuts and bolts. So the first is that a safe portfolio is really a collection of value streams. So here comes the concept that I mentioned earlier, that we're talking about value streams that actually deconstruct from operational value streams. So in your organization, you need to have that concept in play in order for it to actually work. And those value streams are actually going to make up the portfolio, and you're going to fund the portfolio, which in turn fund the value streams. So for large enterprises, as I show below, you might have multiple portfolios because you have multiple value streams. Now, in the rest of the framework, this deconstructs into solutions, into programs and teams, and I don't want to get too much into that right now. What I want to communicate is the concept that really what we're talking about is, a portfolio is value streams, and that's where we're going to be funding. And the rest of the framework kind of deconstructs around this concept. We'll show in a second how we talk about epics that belong to value streams. Value streams are made up of solutions, so you can see how the framework allows you to address those systems that are going to be within those solutions. So at the end of the day, solutions are applications. Another way of looking at it. The other concept is really what we're funding within the portfolio backlog, which I'll talk about in a minute, are initiatives that are epics. So, and here I lay out the structure of the portfolio. So you have a portfolio backlog, which again, it has value streams and solutions. Those have epics within them, and those are going to deconstruct into features at the program level, and agile teams, with stories. And you can see that every one of them has a backlog. So, and we have, feature and enabler epics. But at the end of the day, the portfolio backlog, what you're actually putting through at the portfolio level are these epics, okay? Which are major initiatives that are going to have a MVP, minimum viable product, and are going to require financial approval before implementation. That's where the Lean Portfolio Management governance comes in. So this is my attempt at simplifying or refactoring what is the Lean portfolio process. So you're going to start by defining some strategic themes. Those strategic themes, the easiest way of understanding them, and it's actually within the actual content of Lean Portfolio Management by SAFe, are OKRs, so objectives and key results. So some business outcome that we're defining. So there's an objective, and then there's some key results with some KPIs that we are attaching to in order to measure our business outcome. So that should be easy enough to do using existing content within the organization. Your strategic themes, will be aligned to your portfolios. So again, portfolios being that composition of value streams. The actual definition of the portfolio can be done using a tool called Portfolio Canvas. Is an adaptation of the business model canvas. Again, there's a template available within the SAFe site. I think it's useful in terms of getting everybody to look at the same page. There's some additional elements that have been added to the portfolio canvas in order to make it more adapt to Lean portfolio management. But it's basically the same concept as a business model canvas. Again, it's a very useful in trying to focus the entire organization in defining what that portfolio is. There's the concept of lean budgets and guardrails, and again, guidance provided for what that really means. I think here the most important elements, aside from collaboration and having what's called participatory budgeting, is the concept of horizons. So you have to be thinking about how you're going to invest in your portfolio and the subsequent value streams and solutions over time. And over time meaning in new capabilities, in retirement. So there's, again, specific horizons that are defined in order to determine that level of investment over time. The portfolio roadmap, which you see on the right, actually shows that we're going to be looking at it on a long-term basis. So again, lean budgets and guardrails are an essential element for defining the amount of funding that you're going to put to a portfolio. So once let's go through in terms of the actual essence of lean portfolio management. We're going to be taking in ideas. So that's fairly straightforward. It actually is part of any demand management process, and we welcome any ideas. So that's kind of a general catch-all of what you could be adding to value, that you'd be enhancing a value stream or adding to a solution. That goes through a process of filtering and determining, which ones are good candidates for moving forward. This is a Kanban, so you would literally pick up that item and move it to reviewing. Now, here's where some of the tools that Lean Portfolio Management brings to play are actually coming to play. So the first is that we have this epic hypothesis statement. So when you get to reviewing, you will complete that. That is actually, very succinct way of describing the epic and what we're trying to accomplish. Throughout the entire process, you will use WSGIF and a WIP in order to define how many epics are going to be within reviewing. Again, a lot of collaboration in determining business outcomes and non-functional requirements, but you're going to complete that epic hypothesis statement again when it's ready to move to the next phase. We would go to analyzing, and here's really where the process gets heavier, because we have to complete a lean business case. Again, we refine our our story points, our MVP, our costs. So the lean business case has elements that are somewhat similar to a traditional business case, but it's much more direct, and it goes straight to the crux, which is in safe in lean portfolio management, which is try to determine the value that we're providing the business through this epic. So a lot of focus also on MVP. There are cost estimates. So as part of the lean business case, it's kind of a two-page artifact that lays out the reasons why we should be doing this epic. At the end, there's a go, no-go decision. That's pretty critical, because I actually purposely drew the line, because there is where you're actually, once you receive a go on an epic that's going in the portfolio Kanban, you are putting it into the portfolio backlog. And now we're talking about actually doing continuous prioritization, because we're going to be handing that off to the teams and implementing. So I mentioned prioritization. There's prioritization techniques, again, using WSGIF, even Moscow, if you need to add additional prioritization capabilities. But the portfolio backlog is really where now we are beginning to seeing how we're going to take that down to the rest of the teams, and you can see that the rest of the phases are implementing and done. This is now more of taking it down to the next level of your program backlog and your teams, where they actually do the stories. There's a definition of done here, but I don't particularly like it. I think that's more managing, because you're actually you're not done yet. You're still going through the process of seeing the outcome that you initially defined in your epic hypothesis statement. couple of additional important concepts before we get to the roadmap. The first is that we do have this definition of above threshold and below threshold. Fair amount of discussion in that first teach went on and above and below, and that's because everything that goes into Lean Portfolio should be epics that are sizable. They represent large initiatives for the organization. Smaller pieces of work value that are going to go through can go directly to the teams, and that's fairly common. So it's not such a strange concept. If you have a smaller request that are deemed to deliver value, you can send them directly to implementing. You don't have to go through the whole process and governance of the portfolio Kanban. But you at the same time, you will want to see everything within the organization that's being worked on. So just because it's in the portfolio Kanban above the threshold doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't be looking at everything that's going on within the organization, especially in the context of capacity. Because here, although it's not listed, what we're doing constantly is looking at capacity. What is the capacity to actually deliver on the epic? Which means that we have to have context of all of the work that's being done, and that leads us to some of the other concepts that we're going to talk about with our OnePlan solution. The other is that it's a highly collaborative process, so you need to have epic owners, take that epic through the portfolio Kanban. They're going to be interacting with pretty much everyone else in the organization that's involved with that value stream. And also, product owners and the business owner, if you will, business unit owner who's actually making the request. So again, that collaboration, those collaborations are very important, and they are part of Lean Portfolio Management. So at the end, if we've done all this, we should have a portfolio roadmap that will show us, again, by portfolio, and you might have multiple portfolios, which deconstruct into value streams, where are we going to have our epics. You see, within the chart that you have, near term, short term, near term, and long term definition. And again, that's where we have the concept of horizons, basically laying out for that value stream all the work that's going to be completed. Let's go ahead and move to our next topic. So now I want to talk about OnePlan for Lean Portfolio Management. And this is our solution for addressing project and portfolio management work. We have 4 different solutions that we have within our OnePlan. You can see them here: Strategic Execution Management, Lean Portfolio Management, Adaptive Portfolio Management, and Professional Services. Each one has a very specific set of requirements that we're trying to meet. Obviously, today we're talking about Lean Portfolio Management for Azure DevOps and other Agile tools. I think what's interesting is that, and I'll show in a second, that just because we're doing Lean Portfolio Management and Agile doesn't mean that we don't have to plan. In fact, that's what the Lean Portfolio Management actually tries to have the top down, reach the bottom up that we've been working through with all of our teams, all of our Agile teams. So in this particular scenario that we have here, we have our portfolio management with our planner solution for Microsoft, project management in case you're using Project Desktop, that you can actually have viewed within our OnePlan solution, and then Azure DevOps, if you're actually going through and planning epics within Azure DevOps. All of that can be seen within one portfolio view in OnePlan. You see that we have also additional capabilities in Strategic Execution Management, Adaptive Portfolio Management, and then Professional Services Automation. It just depends on where you are in that Agile, Enterprise Agile adoption cycle, and what solution is going to be better for you Now, for Lean Portfolio Management with Azure DevOps, we have a specific solution where OnePlan is actually fused within the Azure DevOps solution. So the user experience is directly within Azure DevOps. I might not get to it today, but if you're interested, please give us a call and we'll give you a demo of the solution, how it works. You can see that some of the core principles of Lean Portfolio Management are enabled by our OnePlan solution for Azure DevOps. So there is portfolio planning, there is work planning. If you're interested at the epic level and even feature level, if you're using Azure DevOps, we're assuming that these are going to come through from Azure DevOps, and what you're looking at is summary rollups where you can do prioritization for all of that work. There's cost and business value, so there is a fairly sophisticated financial planner that allows you to see the cost at any level of your hierarchy. And then there's resource management. One of the main benefits of doing Lean Portfolio Management is that you're actually defining capacity. So here we're going to actually be defining either by points, hours, or FTEs what your teams are going to be doing at any level of your work hierarchy. And finally, we have very deep reporting with Power BI and content packs that we've developed specifically for the solution. One additional important note is that the solution actually allows you to connect other tools. So if you happen to be working with other tool sets, you're going to be able to bring that data in and actually also see it. So you're not tied exclusively to one solution. And I think that it's currently within organizations, there's multiple tools that are being used. So we have the ability to actually reflect that and have it there for you, so you can do your portfolio analysis, your resource management in particular, so you can see capacity from all these the work that's coming from all these other tools and see whether you can actually deliver that work. So the solution provides portfolio, like I said, program planning capabilities for all the different stakeholders. So whether we're talking about a Scrum Master, product owner, Lean Portfolio Manager, there's capabilities for them to actually see that. And really what we're trying to do is make sure that OnePlan can reflect the entire Lean portfolio for your organization. So let's go through real quick and talk about those 4 elements. First of all, there's high-level portfolio planning. Again, we're bringing the top-down and bottom-up together. You can see what impacts are to the organization from the delivery of these epics. And we have resource management within the tool, and then we talked about the portfolio roadmap. So you will be able to see the portfolio roadmap within OnePlan, because it will give you breakdown by value stream and then epics within the solutions that make up those value streams. So the next level is managing resource demand, and I think probably this is the most important one from all of the attributes that Lean Portfolio Management can bring, is understanding capacity and seeing where the demand for the different epics is going to come from. So here, whether it's the Scrum Master at the team level or Lean Portfolio Manager, in terms of being able to see on a team basis or an individual basis where the demand is coming from all our different epics. So you can see that we have epics at an individual level, and we also have team estimates, and you can select again a time frame or a set of epics and projects that need to be evaluated. There's additional capabilities within the tool to do what if scenario and to actually make work allocations directly within the tool and plan scenarios. So you can see immediately where you might be in trouble in terms of being able to deliver the value of the epic. So the tool also has a financial planner, and you can track, budgets, actuals, and forecasts. There's capability to define your cost categories and cost types. One aspect that I did not mention, is there within Lean Portfolio Management, there's fair amount of integration, I guess, alignment with technology business management. Again, another discipline within technology business management, we're looking at total cost of ownership of solutions and value streams, and having an entire a budget, and not only the budget of resources involved in value streams. So if you are going to be taking in Lean Portfolio Management on its full basis with technology business management, understanding total cost for portfolios and value streams is going to be really important, and that this is where OnePlan can actually support getting that done for you. And then finally, the reporting and insights at the portfolio level. So I showed the hierarchy earlier, and you can actually be reporting at every one of those levels, whether we're talking about the team, the program, or portfolio. All of that work, no matter what source you have, by the way, because if you have third-party solutions for teams and even Azure DevOps, we have the ability to extract that data and then provide the analysis and insights on what's going on, again, at the portfolio level, value stream level, program, and teams. Here, what we're trying to do is enable those decisions so that you can prioritize the epics and decide how you're going to be delivering them with the resources that you have. Again, it's using Power BI and content packs that we have defined specifically for Lean Portfolio Management. So I'd like to just talk about some key takeaways in terms of your next steps for Lean Portfolio Management. So the first is definitely based on all of the requirements for properly implementing Lean Portfolio Management, you want to go through an assessment and understand where your strengths and weaknesses are. This concept of agile mindset, and having an attitude change towards the way you deliver work within the organization is going to be really important, especially I think at the executive level, so that they understand what it's going to take to actually define your organization based on value streams and teams that are going to have to be redefined according to those value streams. We normally do that through a business strategy workshop where we can define and help you understand the challenge or how difficult that challenge is going to be. And within our advisory practice, Agile PMOs and Enterprise Agile transformation is provided. And again, it can be of different scopes and excuse me, different scope and effort, but again, trying to take those very first steps, and especially as you're defining budgets. We're about to start soon in our calendar planning for the next fiscal year, so this is a good time to be considering evaluating how you go about defining portfolios and defining budgets, and seeing if you have the ability to shift left to more of an adaptive PMO. And very simple steps can be taken in terms of how you look at your organizational structure and your investments through an Enterprise Agile transformation engagement. There's our Azure DevOps and OnePlan solution for Enterprise Agile, whether you're doing Lean Portfolio Management or any other Enterprise Agile mode. We have the ability to reflect that within the solution. So please, consider that. And I didn't show it today. I just showed you some highlights. If you are interested in seeing it, please feel free to make contact, and we can schedule a demonstration of how we're reflecting Lean Portfolio Management within OnePlan. And then finally, operations area. There is a lot of new roles which are going to be required within your organization. There's a lot of coaching, a lot of additional components to your organizational structure that probably are currently not in place, whether it's a Lean-Agile Center of Excellence or coaches or Scrum Masters, Azure DevOps specialists. All of those are part of making these transformations a success. So if you don't have them, we have the ability to provide them for you through our operations area, and also with that comes, training. So if you're doing a Lean portfolio management transformation, you saw that the first things that you're going to need to do are, train not only your train your executives, but basically train everyone in the organization at the different levels that are going to be participating. So please take that into account. It's a major critical success factor of your Lean portfolio management transformation. So don't underestimate in any way. So if you happen to appreciate any of what we talked about today, please feel free to make contact. We have some questionnaires and just quick assessments for defining what that roadmap could be for you. It's all contextual, as I said earlier. If you go to any of the classes, they're going to tell you, well, what is the context of your organization? What is your culture? Where are you at in terms of your management leadership mindset? And that has a lot to play with how you go about taking the first steps. And then also, if you're already in a transformation, feel free to make contact in order to evaluate OnePlan for Lean Portfolio Management, so that we can show you how it might accelerate, your journey in your Lean Portfolio Management transformation. And with that, I have completed the presentation. I want to thank you. Again, if there's questions that came up, that you have as a result of the presentation, feel free to let us know, and we'll be more than happy to get on a call, web meeting, and answer them for you. Thank you very much.